This is your Immigrants Magazines program. First, our teaser.
Yes, I remember when I came, I just, took a couple of lessons, but just mainly in the mornings, like 2 hours, and then the rest of the day I remember I went to the public library.
What do you do if you find that there are no candidates that you want to vote for or that represent the views that are important to you? Well, some people would say, I'll just stay home and not vote. I would urge you to get out and vote.
Our magazine is a magazine all about newcomers to Canada. It's created to inform and inspire immigrants to succeed here.
1997 was the year that Miriam Morgan arrived to Canada. A new culture would change her life forever. Unfortunately, her marriage didn't work as she expected. However, she didn't lose her north to progress in this country. Years later, she studied at BCIT, a business administration, when she was a professional and psychologist in Mexico. On this interview, she explained us why she did that change. Miriam Morgan is our guest on our The Immigrants Journey segment, first part.
Well, it's been a challenge since the beginning because obviously when I came to Canada, I came to study English. I was picturing, or I was looking to get into a master's degree program. And so when I came was a shock, a cultural shock. Just coming into Canada as a student, it wasn't easy. So I remember I had like headaches every day just listening to English all the time. I know back in my country, in the university, you are required to have a language, a second language. So I choose English. I read articles. I never write in English. I never listen to English. Yes, I remember when I came, I just, took a couple of lessons, but just mainly in the mornings, like 2 hours, and then the rest of the day I remember I went to the public library. I remember back then in 1997, they have a lab, a language lab, with all sorts of resources like tapes, like a computer. They have videos where you can start learning. So what I did is just go in there, spend all my day there, but not only that. So what I did, I remember, is just going down, taking coffee, because there is always people gathering for the coffee. Yes, taking a break, but talking to people. So it really helped me. Like I just socializing, especially the elder, because seniors have all the time to spend to a foreign-year student. So I remember they teach me a lot. Especially I start listening the pronunciation, the idioms. I start to hear the culture, because also they talk about their culture. And I found out that many of the people who come to Canada come from another country. So that make a big difference in my mind, knowing that I was not alone. I mean, what I meant is, of course, Latinos, we are a minority of minorities, but even though knowing that many people come to Canada with no English as me. Yes, I remember I joined to the church here in 10th Avenue, Alliance Church, because I was looking to a place to worship, because back in my country I'm Christian, so I was looking to that, meet someone in here, a church, or belong to a church. So I went to that church, and they have a youth group, and it's when I met my husband there. So he was a Christian too, and we actually, was very funny because we were to the same event. I remember was a camping in Nanaimo, so we took the ferry. I didn't know he was coming to the same place as me, Dedes Island. So, but in the ship outside, I went outside to look at the stars. It was a beautiful night, very romantic. the stars were shining, and I was looking, and then suddenly he came and approached me and started talking to me. And what was my surprise? We had a good talking, even though I didn't speak English, right? It was more like mimicking, or, you know, having a good time talking to someone that as I say, I always like to talk. So when we arrived to the island, when I saw him, I was like, whoa, this was something really special, very special. Well, unfortunately, the first years were good, but what I can see from back there to now is that he and I think it was like a shock of cultures, a little bit of a shock of cultures, because we couldn't understand each other the same way. He was seeing things different. For example, parenting was different. The way also he treated women in a way, right? That which then after led me to look for help, because our marriage wasn't working. So we had that differences, and unfortunately, you know, I have to come to the decision to end the marriage. It was difficult, especially because when you divorcing here in Canada, you have to go through the family law, which is very difficult. You have to know what are the rights, for example, of women here. It's very different to Mexico. In Mexico, for example, you cannot get divorced if the other your husband or wife doesn't sign. In here it's very different, totally. In here you can ask for divorce, and after a year of marriage you can end your divorce, for number one. Number two, the other issue was the children, right? It's like a battle. Who is going to keep the kids? Who's not going to keep them? Why not? And so unfortunately for me, I had to go through that by myself, because he is from here, from Vancouver. So he had the possibilities also financially to get a good lawyer, right? I didn't have a lawyer. I have to go to legal aid to get representation. And so it was a power struggle, definitely. And I have to go through that. I remember I went to look for help, different agencies. I found that they helped me. There is always help. I was fortunately to get like a social worker who speaks Spanish as well, and so she helped me, and there is all sorts of help.
Did you know that the House of Commons is the center of political power in Canada? The Prime Minister and his cabinet receive their authority through the confidence of the House. Let's talk politics with James Filippelli next.
Hi, my name's James Filippelli, and this is Let's Talk Politics. Today we're going to talk about how our government in Canada is structured. Most people in Canada are aware that we have three main levels of government. There's the federal, provincial, and municipal governments. But a lot of Canadians don't know what each level of government is responsible for. We have the federal government, and they're responsible for things that affect all of Canada as a whole. Things like national defense, immigration, international relations, and foreign aid. They're also responsible for things like EI across the country, employment insurance. They also collect the largest chunk of your tax bill in your provincial or your federal income tax. This money that they use and collect, they dole out a chunk to each of the provinces to provide funding for things like healthcare in order for the provinces to maintain a comparable level of service all across the country. These are some of the things that the federal government is responsible for. What is the provincial government responsible for, you might ask? Well, the provincial government is in charge of all the land and resources that lie within the province that it is. So in BC, 94% of the land is considered Crown land. This is land that the provincial government holds in trust for all British Columbians. Some of this land is maintained directly by the province, and other chunks of this land might be leased out to companies in the resource extraction business, so forestry companies or mining companies who might want to use some of this land to extract resources and pay royalties to the provincial government. The provincial government also provides services to the people of the province. They provide things like healthcare, education, social security, and welfare. As well, we pay a provincial income tax and we pay PST to the provincial government here in BC. The provincial government also oversees Crown corporations. Crown corporations are entities that are at an arm's length from the provincial government and kind of operate within the regulations set forward by the provincial government. In BC, we have TransLink, which provides transportation for the Lower Mainland. We have BC Ferries, which provides ferries across the province and on the coast. And we have ICBC, which provides insurance. These are some of the Crown corporations which exist here in BC. The provincial government also oversees municipal governments. So in BC, there are a number of municipalities which have their own government. Municipal governments are the level of government that is mainly responsible for providing the day-to-day services that you use. Things like garbage pickup, sewage. They maintain the local streets, sidewalks in your communities, and they usually are responsible for policing and fire in the areas where you live. They control things like regulations and business licensing. So they determine whether your neighbor can set up a business in their house, whether they can tear down their house and build a huge condo tower, or whether these things are against the regulations and zoning provided by the city. These are some of the different levels of government within BC. There are also a couple more, which are maybe a little less common. In BC, we have regional school boards. These are made up of elected members who are responsible for spending the money which is given to the school boards by the province to provide education to British Columbians. And there are also regional governments. Metro Vancouver would be one example. It's made up of mayors from around the municipalities in the Lower Mainland, which work together to provide shared services to the people in the Lower Mainland area. I hope this has given you a bit of an indication of some of the different levels of government within our province, what services they provide. I'm sure most of you have heard before that you need to vote because it is your right here in Canada. And a lot of people come from places where they don't have that right. Canada is a country that was founded on immigration. And there's a lot of people who've come to Canada who grew up in places where they weren't allowed to participate in democracy and have a say in their government. Yes, it is important to vote because we have that right to vote. But in Canada, we're not really worried about being overtaken by some tyrannical dictatorship that might end up suppressing a large segment of the population. Yet, it is still important that you get out and vote. In one of our previous segments, we talked about the different levels of government that exist here in Canada and BC. And those segments have elections in order to elect the representatives that will enact the things that they're responsible for. And it's important for you to get out there and vote so that you have a say in how they enact those things that they're responsible for. For example, municipal governments. We talked about how municipal governments have the biggest impact on your day-to-day life. Yet, municipal voter turnout hovers around 20%. The municipal governments are responsible for things like the police and fire department in your community, as well as the maintenance of the roads and sidewalks, and things like business licensing and zoning of developments. So, if you don't go and vote in your municipal elections, you have no real say in how the government takes care of these things. Provincially, voter turnout is around 50 to 60%. The provincial government is responsible for the overall control of Crown land, which we learnt before was approximately 94% of all land here in British Columbia. They're responsible for things like the resource extraction industry, and therefore are in charge of environmental controls on a lot of BC. They're also responsible for things like education, healthcare, and social services like welfare and old age security. If you care about these things, it's important that you get out and vote so that the government that's elected represents the issues that you care about. Federally, we talked about how the government is responsible for things that affect Canada as a whole. They're responsible for things like foreign relations with other countries, international aid, national defense, and immigration. If these issues are important to you, it's important that you get out and vote federally. And as we heard before, as in provincial elections, voter turnout federally is only around 50 to 60%. So it's important that you get out and vote and have your say. Every 4 years in BC, there's an election. And as we talked about in our previous segments, there's different levels of government. There's municipal, provincial, and federal governments. And each of these will have an election every 4 years. It's important that you get out and vote at each of these elections. So what should you do when you're deciding who you should vote for? You want to think about the issues that are important to you, and then research the candidates' positions on each of these issues and vote based on that. If you don't do that research, you could be inadvertently voting for a candidate that wants to do things that are against your best wishes and interests. What do you do if you find that there are no candidates that you want to vote for or that represent the views that are important to you? Well, some people would say, I'll just stay home and not vote. I would urge you to get out and vote anyway. You can go and vote, but not actually vote for a candidate. To do this, you just go and deliberately spoil your ballot. You see, when you stay home and don't vote, it tells the government that you are apathetic and that you don't care about what happens in politics, that the issues are not important to you. But if you take the time to get out there and vote, but you deliberately spoil your ballot so that they can see that none of the candidates actually represent you, then you're showing the government that you do care, but that none of them represent you. And that will force the government to take positions that more align with what's important to you. If you find consistently there's no one that's representing what's important to you, there's other ways that you can get involved in politics to make a positive difference. Instead of waiting to election day and then having the opportunity to spoil your ballot as your only means of showing that frustration, you should be getting involved in politics more early in the process. Do your research between elections. Find parties that you might believe in or candidates that you might believe in, and go and volunteer with them, donate to them, become a member of the party. When you do this, you can help them form policy that might align with the things that you want to do, the ways that you want your government to govern you in BC. And if you can't find a candidate or party that represents you or wants to take suggestions from you on the policies that you would like to see them implement, you can always run as a candidate yourself, or find someone in your community that you would like to have represent you and urge them to get involved in politics. Get them to come forward and register as a candidate to run in the election. Support them, spread the word about them, and get voters together to vote for them. That way, you can ensure that the issues that are important to you are represented on the ballot, and there's someone there that you can vote for and truly believe in. In Canada, we're blessed to have this type of democracy where anyone can participate. The government belongs to you and me, and our participation doesn't need to be limited to once every 4 years when there's an election. We need to get out there and really have our say in how we want to be governed. My name's James Filippelli, and this was Talk Politics. Thank you.
If you have a long time living in Canada, maybe you read this magazine, Canadian Immigrant. Well, Canadian Immigrants team were in Vancouver. They organized a job fair. Take a look.
Welcome to the Canadians Immigrant magazine event in Canada Place, Vancouver. Did you know that this magazine was founded in 2004 by Nick Noorani, a social entrepreneur from Dubai? Not only that, he was laid off before he started off this magazine. Let's go.
If you just arrived to Vancouver and you are an immigrant and don't have a job, this Canadian Immigrants event is for you. There are thousands of professionals on their fields that can hire you, and also you can hear their fantastic experiences on this event.
The event itself is very good, and I know that I've been involved in this for about 16 years, specifically this one just for a few years, but I believe that programs like this or events like this are crucial for newcomers to Canada, because usually what happens is they're looking for information, they're thirsting for information, and an event like this will give them information so that they can make a very good decision as to what they can do with their careers and how to move forward.
So this is a great fair, just because not a lot of these things happen in Vancouver. I attend a lot of these actually all over Canada. So I promote CELPIP across Canada. We have testing centers all across Canada. So it's a great way to reach a lot of our potential test takers in one area.
I think it's very useful. I see my students going around and talking to people. And so that's what I want them to do, is to network a little bit and see what other future opportunities there are.
Which is really helpful. Actually, I find the things I wanted here, so I'm really happy about it. It's really well organized. We got so many information, so it's just really helpful, you know.
I just want to have some experience to how to find a job in Canada. So I'm a new immigrant here, so I know because I wasn't have any work experience in Canada, so I don't know how to find a job in here, and what's different in China, like this fire, but similar, yeah.
Many of us are thirsty of learning and working in our field once we arrive to Vancouver. Well, sometimes takes time to get that, but you have to be persistent in what exactly you want to do in this country. Canadian Immigrants event takes away anxiety, depression from you, and helping you to get enough information and orientation in your career.
Our magazine is a magazine all about newcomers to Canada. It's created to inform and inspire immigrants to succeed here. We have been writing the magazine for over a dozen years, and it's national in Vancouver, Toronto, and Calgary. And part of our magazine now is also these events. I'm the editor of the magazine, and I've been the editor since almost its inception, and so I've seen a huge evolution in the magazine over the years, and in the people we write about and the stories about immigrants in Canada, and it's been a wonderful experience.
And remember, always be ready and optimistic when you go hunting for a job. Canada is now your new home, where it's not allowed to lose. This country wants winners like you.
Empower them and basically offer the supports that I think I would have wanted when I first came here.
Before closing today's segment, I want to share with you all an interesting information about the Canadians Immigrants magazine. The Canadians Immigrants magazine attracts over 400,000 readers each month and over 100,000 readers online. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Saturday, December 10th. It's going to be a special day for all of us. Why? Because we want to get feedback from you. We want to get suggestions for our program to improve our program. We're at Creekside Recreation Center. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I am Fabiola Palomino, your host. Have a wonderful day. problemas de relaciones interpersonales, separación, divorcio, problemas con niños, adolescentes y adultos.
Soy la doctora Yolanda Montoya, soy Clinical Counselor y mi teléfono es el 604-861-1071.